for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello, listeners. Hope you all had a happy Christmas.
I know I did.
Great Boxing Day. And welcome, if Steven stops interrupting me, to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast.
Wow, was that the most long intro? Did you have to take a breath in between every word?
Yeah, man, it's my first time doing this. I'm not in shape for this like you, I gotta train, I gotta practice. I ain't like you.
Yeah. Well,
we hoped y'all liked the Eric Stover interview that we did. We for sure loved it.
Yeah, it was absolutely, and we got another fantastic episode.
Another one.
Yes. Armand, I hope your Christmas went well. I know mine did. It's Boxing Day. Sit around on the couch, box things up while watching the Premier League. Nothing gets better. But you might as well, put the game on halftime on mute, or if you're, cleaning up, put it on mute. Turn on Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast because it's about Save the Crew today. We haven't talked about them in a while.
No, we haven't, and they were a massive story leading up to the MLS playoffs, and man, how awkward would it have been if Don Garber was handing that trophy to Anthony Precourt in Columbus. That would have been hilarious. Come on.
No, but it's like when Goodell handed over the Lombardi trophy to the Patriots last year. God, the boos.
But imagine that at Foxborough.
Yeah, the boos would be even more. That's the thing is, neutral site of Houston versus Foxborough, the commissioner. But yeah, Garber, dude, he would have been booed off the stage. No chance.
Well, they hate Garber right now.
Oh, absolutely.
They hate Garber with the burning passion. There's been a lot of suspect things going wrong with the Save the Crew movement. It does feel like a lot of words are being flip-flopped from the Austin clause that no one knew about until a couple months ago to just a sudden announcement of them looking to move while in the midst of a playoff run. There's been a lot of interesting stuff, and today we're actually going to talk to one of the big guys in the Save the Crew movement.
Yeah, and we're going to get to him here in a moment, but I want to quickly recap what the Columbus Crew has done for the league. They've won one MLS Cup in 2008. They lost. They've been to another, lost that in 2015 against Portland. They are 3-time Supporter Shield champs. They did the double in 2008. 2004 and 2009 were the other two. U.S. Open Cup champs in 2002. And then in 1999, they opened the first soccer-specific stadium. Huge for the league. Massive. And but then drops the bombshell. October 17th, 2017. Precourt announced intentions to relocate the franchise to Austin, Texas, if a downtown stadium could not be secured in Columbus. And then from that, we opened #SaveTheCrew. It was a huge revolt. Massive revolt.
It's really interesting to see what happens from this from this movement. Will the Crew stay in Columbus, or will they end up moving to Austin? And that's the important question surrounding MLS, because MLS hasn't done what the big boy leagues have done, and with the Los Angeles team, the teams moving to Los Angeles, and the NFL, NBA, we saw the Supersonics move to Oklahoma City. We've seen teams move left and right in other leagues, but MLS, we've only seen one. And the fact of the matter is, when the Earthquakes moved to Houston, they got their team back within 6-7 months. Yeah. It wasn't like they were gone forever. If Columbus is gone, they're gone forever from MLS, unless the pyramid opens and a Columbus team comes up through the NASL. So this is really important. This is actually really important if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, because of the way MLS is currently structured.
Yeah, and here's the other note I think a lot of people forget, and it's a little astonishing to realize. So Commissioner Garber was addressing, the national media in his State of the League conference, and he was going back to 2008 when the league was struggling. I mean, remember, '08 it's borderline 10 years ago, right? Huge difference in the structure, how many teams, stadiums, the perception. It was kind of a joke still then, compared to absolutely a joke compared to today. But back then, across the world, MLS was a joke. Today, I think it has a lot more respect. But MLS wanted to get rid of the multi-ownership of teams. They just wanted one ownership per team, and they're trying to get rid of that. Well, the Columbus Crew were on the market, and in fact, they did not find an owner for quite some time because of the low value, because it was Columbus, because of the league. They were borderline thinking they would fold the team.
And to be honest with you, that is a reality that a lot of teams have faced.
Yes.
I'm sure I've mentioned it many times on the show. FC Dallas was on the verge of potentially folding in 2002. There are many teams that have had this fate. The thing with Columbus is a lot of people dispute what Don Garber has been saying, talking about the local ownership and the issues around buying clubs. So it's a question of who do we believe? Do we believe the Crew, or do we believe Don Garber? And it's such an interesting dynamic because there's been lots of interesting stuff coming out with the Save the Crew movement. They've discovered lots of things, and I'm really interested to see what's going to end up happening with the Crew, because if they do end up leaving, what's that going to stop another potential owner coming in, purchasing a team, and relocating them instead of going through expansion? That's the main argument that I think a lot of people. I mean, think about it. Anthony Precourt paid $68 million compared to the $150 you have to pay to get into MLS, which what Nashville paid, and now is moving his team. Why can't someone do that and say, "Hey, look, I'll move my team to Detroit. Let's buy you and move"?
Well, here's the silver lining. When Precourt bought the club, he actually saved the Crew, and now look what he's doing. Silver lining. Anyway, let's get to our guest here, Morgan Hughes. He is born and raised in Columbus. He's been following the Crew ever since they've joined the league. But more importantly, he is one of the, I guess, he's the front of the camera guy. He's the microphone guy. That's what he emailed me for Save the Crew. He's the community's advocacy group. He's also got various roles behind the scenes. Morgan, you can follow him at Morgan_Hughes. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, we appreciate your time. But let's get to kind of your background. Let's talk about what's the Crew? How did you get into it? Is it an accessible team? Were you able to follow it easily? Is the community presence there in the early days with the league, and say, before 2010?
Yeah, so I'm, as you mentioned, I was born in Columbus. I was raised in Columbus. I live in Columbus. I'll probably die in Columbus. And as is the case with most teenagers, sports was my entire life, and any team that was in Columbus, I was a fan of that team, whether it was the Columbus Chill, the Buckeyes, the Horizon, any of the early 90s teams. That was my thing. And when the Crew announced that, they were going to be a soccer team in Columbus in 1994, it was I was on board just, because they were going to be a team in Columbus, Ohio, and those are the things that I was all about. I wasn't necessarily a soccer guy as a 13-year-old, but I'm not sure at that time in American soccer fandom there were a lot of soccer people. Certainly not as many as there are today. But over the years, it's just become a part of our community, and to see somebody try to tear that away from us is just completely and totally unacceptable. So that's kind of how I got into the Crew, and there's the backstory on that.
So between Columbus and the Crew, what is the connection? Because we've seen the commissioner and owner Anthony Precourt claim that there's been no business help or whatnot. But what is the true connection between the city and the Crew?
Well, Columbus is a very important, and I'm not naive enough to think that. Listen, I know that I'm not really objective completely when it comes to Columbus soccer because I'm just in the middle of it. But Columbus is a very important city to the game of soccer in America, and for a country that doesn't necessarily have a super long history with the game, certainly not in comparison to a lot of the superpowers around the world in soccer. You have to really protect what history and what history you have with the game of soccer in America. And Columbus was, not just the first team in Major League Soccer, but it's the spiritual home of both national teams. There was an era, and if people are not old enough to remember this, I certainly don't fault them for it, but there was an era in American soccer where we played Mexico at the Rose Bowl, and we couldn't find a home field advantage because it just literally didn't exist. And Columbus was that city where that home feeling started. All of the Dos Aceros and all of the friendlies and the Women's World Cup, and this is where the United States Soccer Federation comes when they need a win. And it's not because of the stadium, and it's not because of the field. It's because of the feeling that the supporters in this community give that event. And it was just announced today that the She Believes Cup is coming back to Columbus. So for a city that apparently, according to Don Garber and Anthony Precourt, doesn't care about soccer, it would seem that the United States Soccer Federation disagrees with that.
So I mean, I don't want to do too much jumping around here, but you bring up an interesting point with the connection with the national team, and Michael Bradley, after the Toronto series in the first leg, he came out and kind of criticized, the structure. And he's part of the national team, so he's played there multiple times, and he understands, I guess, a little bit better. But it's the first time that we've heard a player outside of Columbus really come out and kind of, stoke the fire and kind of, give Precourt another reason to leave. Like, look, I mean, this guy, it's kind of, Michael Bradley, one of the faces of MLS and U.S. soccer. When he said that, how did you feel?
I think that Michael Bradley probably would be best served if he took a class in anger management. He certainly has a short memory if he thinks that the narrative put out there by the people who pay his paycheck every week is in any way factual. Listen, we booed him every single time he touched the ball in the first leg of the Eastern Conference Finals this year. And, and I don't know why, every single person in a sea of 20,000 booed him, but, you're playing for Toronto and you're playing in Columbus. People are not going to be excited about you in that scenario. And for him to lash out was kind of sad. I wasn't angry. I just kind of pitied him because, to me, it shows a guy that doesn't get the situation very well. He just doesn't understand it. He thinks that if he thought he was at Monterey Stadium with the national team jersey on, then, we may need to check his mental health a little bit. But, that was just a guy lashing out. And it just, maybe he proved a little bit that we were kind of right to boo him. And, I can't speak for him and I can't speak for everybody else, but I found his comments to be confusing and sad. And I'm not with him. I just kind of pity him.
So let's go back to October 17th, 2017, when it comes out that Columbus is looking into potentially moving to Austin. I know Steven was